time over to Commissioner Rogers.
I do, and we're very thankful to have Commissioner Rogers joining us today. Some very brief announcements. We're very excited that the city is going to be able to offer 2 grant programs for small businesses starting this coming Monday. One program is a grant from the state of Oregon, from Business Oregon, in the amount of $35,000. The other program, and we thank Commissioner Rogers for his help on this, is a $248,000 grant of Federal CARES Act money coming from the county. And so the details of the programs and the descriptions of the programs are on the city website. I think all of our business licensees, maybe 500 that have given us email addresses, have now received it. Information on it. We're going on social media, a media release. So we're looking forward to having applications on the website and start for the 2 programs this coming Monday with the deadline of Friday, so we can work to get the money out as quickly as possible. Each program is a little different. There's quite a bit different because of the different funding sources. So we hope businesses read them closely in submitting, and I'm always available to try to answer questions. The other thing I just wanted to announce once again is tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock from 10 to noon, we've got the Small Business Entrepreneurship Educational Program that the Chamber and the city work together on. We do this every month. This one and the last one and the next few coming up are sponsored or helped to be sponsored by Banner Bank. This is we thank Metro for the grant to undertake this during the year. And this program is going to be about working with your business advisors. So there'll be a tax attorney, there'll be a tax accountant, and there'll be a business banker joining us for the call tomorrow. It's free. Sign up through the Chamber website. Those are my announcements. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. So at this point, we'll turn some time over to Commissioner Rogers to just talk about a few updates from the county's perspective on COVID and some of the projects that are influencing Sherwood. And then we'll open it up for some questions. So you can, when that time comes, you can unmute and ask your question, or if you prefer, you can also ask the question through the chat function. So Commissioner Rogers, go ahead.
Thank you, Corey. Good to see those that I can see on my screen. And my birth certificate says Roy, so that's what I prefer, by the way. So for those that have known me a long time, you kind of outlined 2 or 3 areas. I'll kind of touch on those, but I think that there's some more issues that you might want to be aware of. As those of you who've known me for any length of time, I serve on a lot of transportation committees. I've been on JPAC, probably the longest standing member on JPAC, which is the Metro Committee, which is regional money. I chair the Region 1 Act, and that's 4 counties. That's Multnomah, Clackamas, Hood River, and Washington. And so I see state money going through, and then I also chair what we call WCCC, which is the Washington County Coordinating Committee. And so that's most of the local money. So I guess if it's moving at all, I'm seeing it throughout the region. Some things that you asked specifically about are some projects in your particular area. Happy to discuss that a little bit. You're asking about COVID, though that changes daily. And then there's a couple of 3 things you didn't ask about that maybe we ought to touch upon. So let me touch those first, because they may generate some questions. One that the city probably is well aware. I know Joe Gawley, every time he sees me, he said, Roy, you're always harping on the same thing, and that is as boundaries and the UGB is expanded, I really would like to encourage you to take a look at your southern boundary. My thought is you take and run down 124th to the Willamette River. If you don't, there'll be people who come to your south and to your east who will take your half of the city boundaries down, not the existing, but I mean all that land. So there's a need to do that. You may need a water source additional, the Willamette. I know people have some squeamishness about that, but as you know, the large project that's being built, in fact, I think the not the transmission lines, but the actual where they're processing is in the city of Sherwood, right there on 124th. But you may want to protect your southern border. So that's one I would encourage you to do. Another one, the commuter rail. I chaired that project originally. Of course, that's all history now. It's a long time ago, but your mayor at that time was very involved in the project. There was always an anticipation that the line would go to Sherwood, which it already does, as you know, it's just not utilized. I've also talked with Doug Kelsey, and he's the TriMet general manager, numerous times about the Southwest Corridor. And I think that unless you get in the queue, that's the way this business is. I always tease and say I'm Johnny Appleseed. I'm putting seeds in the trees I will never see in my lifetime or my career, but I'm putting them in. You need to plant those seeds too. If you never plan for any kind of transit getting over there, it won't happen. And you need to be very loud and very vocal and take no prisoners. I mean, you need to get there. And I'm certainly your advocate because I think there needs to be some sort of an examination and a spur off the Southwest Corridor so that it can run to Sherwood. Sherwood's a very young community. It's growing. It's job intensive, and as you start looking at your industrial sections, which I know you will, it's important that you consider that. Another one is on 99W. That wasn't one of the topics that you brought up, as you know. There's been an ask and it got into the get moving with Metro Measure, $3-4 million. But as I told, in fact, not only your mayor but all the mayors along, because I represent that corridor, nothing's going to work on 99W unless some really different things happen. And you can study it all you want, but you're going to have to take and probably move some people out of their existing sites because to expand, you're going to have to do that. Or the alternative, which when I was mayor a bazillion years ago in Tualatin, we always looked at a bypass, which got hijacked to a much bigger project, but a bypass that would go around Tualatin. That's effectively happening with the 124th. So we need to make certain that 124th is developed across the Salt Creek, which we're doing. Once that connects into Boone's Ferry, though I know our friends in Clackamas County would like it to bridge the freeway, and I understand why they want to do that, but it gets very expensive real quick. But on 99W, there is no silver bullets, and that's what I told them. Unless one or other alternative, I said, be creative. Business people are always creative and smart. Tell them that what you'd like to do is to upzone their property. They like that a lot. I mean, you sit there and say, we'll upzone you. You can have a lot more density. And they say, well, we can give a little frontage if we can do that. So that's important as well. So those are topics that maybe are just planting seeds with you to say there's many other things in the future that might bring some interest to you. Oh, one other that I know that a couple of your counselors have talked to me, and that's a footbridge to a new high school across 99W. I think it's a great project, very expensive, and where we're going to get funds, I'm not sure, but we're all looking at how to accomplish that. So that's in the works as well. I've not seen the ask made at the of ODOT other than just some preliminary meetings, but you've got to get into the queue again. I mean, you got to start asking for monies in their STIP, which is coming up. If you can believe it, we're now looking at 24, 27, so that's out there a bit. In regard to COVID, you asked me a bit about that. One of the things I'd clear up really quickly is that the county asked not to be tethered to the other two counties. Honestly, the one I think who's got the worst of the deal is Clackamas. I talked to Paul Savis over there and said, Paul, your county is so diverse compared to ours. I mean, you got everything from Sandy, Oregon to Molalla I mean, it doesn't make much sense. But what's happening is that we are tethered. That's beyond all of our pay grades. That's the governor, and she isn't much listening to what we have to say. She's going to call that shot, and she has done that. And as you see, she's now even requiring a face mask in offices, even though you can maintain 6 feet. She said if you're in the halls or in the bathrooms or in the lunchrooms, you got to wear a face mask. So the standards keep changing all the time. So it's always being asked. I got a lot of interesting mail saying, get us out of that agreement. I can't. I mean, I'd love to. We wrote a letter saying we'd like to be. They have 5 indicators of how we might be able to move to phase 2. People have asked that, but we have to move as a region. And Multnomah County isn't improving on any of these things. So As long as we're tethered to them, we've got a problem. But I would tell you the tests are that they have one called the percent of tests reported positive. It should be going down. For us, that's not correct. It's up. It's 5.4% uptrend. So we fail. You got to meet them all. So we fail. Percent of change in cases, we're down 20%. And you can say, well, that's good. It is. So we met one of the five. Percent of cases not linked to an existing one, meaning that we don't know that, Renee had COVID and talked to me in a meeting and I got it. Well, those are linked. We're up 36%, so you got to be 30% or less. So we fail. Hospitalizations per day should be going down. We're up, so we failed. And we have to have contact tracing below 95% or higher. We're 97, so we win. So even if we were by ourselves, we fail on 3 of the 5 requirements. And to be very crystal clear, these aren't our requirements. I don't know if anybody's in the insurance business that's on the phone, but you take risk. I know in business, I bet you in the garbage business, I bet you guys take a bunch of risk over pride. But we all take risk. We're not being asked what risk we're willing to take. It's being dictated to us. So the risk is percentages that we don't have anything to do or we don't have any way of impacting. So that's what's going on. Whoops, my phone's always ringing, so I'm not going to pay attention to it. We can't move to phase 1 now. We can't until Multnomah County and Clackamas. Clackamas County's also written a letter, and so it's not good news. Just to tell you some numbers, this is really, really fresh. As of today, there's 3,324 confirmed cases. We have a daughter in Arizona, and they think 5,000 a day is okay, but we got 3,324 since the beginning. So it's just, again, the numbers that are in place. We have 107 presumptive, which probably will be in that total eventually. We've had 69,470, which 69,000 rough, of negatives, people who've been tested. So a lot of people are testing and they're negative. 266 hospitalizations and another death since yesterday. We have 32 total. I certainly don't make light of any of this. It's important. We need to do everything we can to protect everyone. At some point, I guess we're going to have to decide, what's acceptable, because the economy is not coming back really, really well. In regard to the COVID money, you asked about that, and this will blame Corey, because he's the one who asked me to talk about the quick things, and we'll get into your questions. We got $104 million, a lot of money. And just so that you know, the only ones in the state who got money was Washington County, Multnomah County, City of Portland, and then the state itself. So Clackamas County, for instance, they didn't get an allotment. They have to get it out of the state money. But out of that 104, I always say I was in the worst of the 2 committees. I was on a committee that had to say, what are the buckets of money we're spending it on? And then we have other people who actually get to spend it. So that's the fun part. They get to be Santa Claus. We had to decide how it was going. Out of that 104, we put $64 million in what we call public health, which is the PPE and anything that had to do with various costs of abating or mitigating issues. Out of that 64, 54 was funding for county and then county-wide support for COVID. 10 million went to the cities, and so I don't take too much pride. And this is for Renee and the city folks. Thank you for saying I got you 200,000. I wanted more. Most of that money went to special service districts, which my district that I represent, which is all of you, 80% of the people are in cities. And I said, well, I think that the city should get a little bit more. Others didn't have that same feeling. But so 10 million went to the cities out of the 64. Then we had categories we called stabilization. This is more economic development. We had about economic recovery. We were reimbursing the cities for those who made grants early, which I was all for, but I have a little bit of heartburn on, because if you were a city who didn't reimburse because you didn't have means, those who did, if you would have known that 6 months ago, you would have said, sure, I'll take $5 million and reimburse it if you're going to reimburse me everything. So they were reimbursing those who already had spent the money and only doling out small amounts to people who hadn't yet. But there was about $5 million in that category. There was some countywide business grants of $1 million. There's another $9 million, so that's being targeted a little bit, because everybody is now saying we need other kinds of things. Childcare, which I supported, though I had a different take on it. And what happened after we got out of this committee was it kind of got changed. The $4 million for childcare, I was hoping would go to as business grants, so that you had that option. They're only taking it to childcare providers. I don't have anything against that. That's important as well. But I thought, well, a business might have a need, and if you could give them money, I mean, they could pick who's going to assist their child. It wouldn't have to just go to child care based facilities. And then we had another $6 million that went to rent and mortgage assistance. The rent I understood, the mortgage assistance is still being worked out. I'm just telling my take on it. A little bit of heartburn, because the government does a fine job of just saying this is really cool to do, and they don't put any of the specificity in there. I'm not picking on my city partners, because I know I always say county paints with a broad brush. Cities have to go with finer lines. But I don't know how the mortgage assistance is going to work. They're trying to figure that part out. We have homeless that we allocated about $1.5 million to. We had our nonprofit organizations. There was another million there. And what's interesting, getting right down to the bottom line, there's $7.5 million that wasn't allocated. Still not allocated. So it's important to know that there's money there. One of the things that I've asked, and I know that at Tiger 12 and Pools, which is a separate district, I asked them what their needs were, and they put in some grants, and they got one. And I said, and you say, what's that got to do? Well, if you got swimming pools, you've got to do certain sterilization, and you've got to have certain equipment, and so it's important. So all of that comes to $104 million. When's it being spent? Slowly. It's going out, but slowly. Just one more sideline, and I'll get off of this topic, because I'm well over what you wanted me to speak on. Is that with Clean Water Services, we've been looking at how we might fill a gap. And so we've gotten into the face mask business, and you say, well, why? There's 1,000 million people who do it. Well, this program, all this COVID money, has to be spent on a cash basis. And for those of you who understand, there's the accrual basis and cash, all has to be spent by 12/31. No IOUs, it has to be spent. And it can't be spent on equipment like roads or other kinds of equipment, just certain things for COVID related. So it's very important that the supply maintain after that. And so we figured out suppliers, and the chamber ought to take a look at that too. I've talked with the Beaverton, the Tigard, and the 12 chambers, and they're excited. They would even buy it. Their members would buy it. We can buy masks at about half to 40%, because we can go right to the source. So no middleman, and so we can even store. We have that capability. The EOC, which is the folks that we work through at the state, said, well, don't do that. We can provide you all of masks. So I asked how many they have. They had about 250,000, which sounds like a lot. But the schools alone, Hillsborough schools, said, well, we can use that in a month, in fact, in a week, if you'll give us to it. So we played a little naughty. I said, go ask them for the 250,000, because they told us they had an endless supply. They said, we can't give you that. We don't, we won't have after that. So you claimed it was endless. So anyway, we're making some roads to try to get that availability. So that's a very brief, but we can go on for an hour just on the COVID and on transportation issues. But I've overextended the 10 or 15 minutes you allowed me, and I will stop.
Okay, thank you. No, that's all good information. Really appreciate all the work that you're doing on behalf of the county. So at this point, we will open it up for some Q&A. Does anyone, you can either unmute or you can type your question into the chat box. I don't see any questions in the chat box at this point. So does anybody have a question they'd like to unmute and ask?
I do, and others aren't ahead of me.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Okay, so my question is, I understand that not all of the CARES Act funds that was allocated for the rural areas for businesses in the unincorporated, not rural areas, has actually been used. And I'm wondering if there might be a chance for what's not being used to go to the cities, so that we can make additional small business grants. Just a question.
Well, again, we could get into a lot of history, but there was a little bit of heartburn because when the county did their original program, they only wanted it for the unincorporated areas and for 2 cities in the west. Obviously, I wasn't fond of that and made my comments well known. And let's just say there were some choice off the record and parking lot comments to me, but I didn't care because I didn't think that was fair. My district got 0, and so we opened it up. But that's the issue. I mean, it is, what are you going to do in the 60? I know there's too many numbers I'm throwing, but in the $54 million that the county took, one of the very last lines says countywide support for COVID-19 health and safety facility upgrades and supplies, including for cities and special and service district. Well, let's pick on you as the city of Sherwood, and I've talked, I can't remember with Keith or I might have talked with Joe, but I said, you have distancing issues. You go into the library, you go into City Hall, you need some sort of ways to distance people so that they can be in queuing lines. You pick somebody up and you run them out to our jail, but it's your policeman, your police officer who does it. Do you have all the equipment that you need there? Do you have the hand sanitizers? Do you have the face mask? In your park areas, are you designed to allow people to distance? And I said, make a request for that stuff. And frankly, $230,000 is a nice change, bunch of change, but you're going to spend that in the blink of an eye. So then it gets down to the business grants. That's what this whole idea of the 27 million roughly was for, and it's going out really slow. 2 of my colleagues on the commission are involved in that particular area and are frustrated because this became a very tedious process. It should have been easy, but that's just my opinion, and theirs too. Get the money out. I mean, it doesn't do any good for us to have it in our bank account, but I'm hoping, what I think you ought to do is make another request. And I'm hoping that your mayor and your city council will say, I know you got $7.5 million unallocated there. How about us? I mean, I've always said that this isn't the county money. I mean, we wouldn't have gotten that if we didn't count the cities, for heaven's sakes. That's how we got the money. So you're partners, full partners. I don't know if I answered what you were asking, but
you did. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And Christian, you're not asking a question, but there is.
I actually just unmuted myself so I could.
Well, you do have I know you're being asked, and one of the things that your industry is, in fact, I was talking to Dean the other day on this very topic, is that I know you're being asked for a moratorium on collections, and I understand that. But I'm concerned the chatter will be, what are you going to do in regards to your program, not to just defer, but to abate? And to me, in a business, what you do, we can all come up with that later, but to try to do early strikes at that and say, I just think you ought to write off all this stuff. I mean, all you're going to do, unless you're the dumbest business person in the world, and I know you're not because I've talked to you many times, you're just going to shift it to the rest. I mean, everybody knows that. I mean, there is no free lunch. So there needs to be a thoughtful plan, and I think your industry needs to be involved. So anyway, that's my little tidbit, but go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't really have a question. It was more a comment on the CARES funding. I was really just going to express my appreciation because I know that a small portion of that money has been allocated to help customers that are struggling to pay their garbage bills through community fund, because we and the other haulers in the county have agreed to not disconnect customers that are having issues paying their bills. And so those collections amounts are, getting pretty far out, as well as higher dollar amounts. And so that fund that's set up that we can direct people to soon to get assistance with that, I just was expressing appreciation for that. But you're right. Ultimately, for folks that aren't able to get caught up on those bills once that moratorium is over, ultimately they'll be written off as bad debt, and then those costs will be spread across all of the ratepayers that are still in the system. So,
yeah, well said. And remember, we're all happy and giddy. It's Christmas today, but 12/31 is going to come fast, and then what happens? That's what I keep saying. Look beyond this Christmas season. I mean, it's coming fast. Going fast. Corey, is there any other questions? Because I could talk about some more transportation issues if you want.
Looks like Bruce has a question.
I actually wanted to ask something about transportation. You've already talked a bit about.
You broke up. I can't. We need to get you some money.
If this I-2.
We're not hearing you at all. I don't know if everybody else is. Everybody else I can see, but you were breaking up.
You were breaking up a little bit, Bruce. Go ahead.
Let me try it again. So I wanted to ask you about a transportation issue. You already mentioned, I hope you can hear me. You already mentioned commuter rail. You mentioned the light rail, the TriMet. I'm wondering if, from a regional point of view, if this tolling of I-205 is a real possibility, and what the implications might be, if that's coming along.
Yeah, what happened, there was an original tolling committee, and I served on that committee, which was also included Clark County, Washington. It's what we call an MPO, which is Metropolitan Planning Organization. So I sat on that. Now it's gone into a different direction as far as what the state's going to do. There's two roads being looked at tolling. One is I-5, it goes through the Rose Quarter, and the other one's I-205. The fighting is just now beginning, and what the fighting is that I have a different understanding of a toll. So if I'm disagreeing with anybody, I apologize. Just giving you my take, and you can be mad at me. But I've always thought tolls are fine if you're giving people something. And what you got to give them is additional lane miles, or you've got to give them expressway. You got to do something. You just can't take the toll. That's not what tolling always means. Tolling may mean that I discourage people from using roads. It's an interesting way of doing things, but what that happens in that when you do that, people leave that freeway system and go on to streets that are within those counties. And so they're obviously very concerned. The cities all along that route in Clackamas County. Metro is concerned and made comments about how do you do a tolling on 205 without doing a simultaneous tolling on I-5, because you'll divert everything over to I-5. People will try to use that. And it's a valid comment. So it's in a very preliminary, it gets mixed in with some diversity and equity issues in regard to people who can pay. I argue that if we're going to do that, you need to also say, how about the people from Washington who are coming through? What if they can't pay? Or our friends in Hood River, which I told you I served as the chair of a committee that deals with those folks, they're saying, we have poor people too. You don't want us to come through your counties? Okay, we got to figure. They're already saying they don't like to come through Portland. They're shipping everything up 205 to Seattle to ship all their crops out. So I don't have a good answer. It's just starting now. I've had 3 briefings on it, one as recently as Monday, and so there's a big issue. I also want to tell you, though, if you asked about transportation, we've got over $90 million in investment that we and our partners, meaning the school district, I think there might be a little city money. I know the water project has got money to do a number of projects in your area. 90 million is a lot. It really is. What you should be telling your folks is you should plan on 3 to 4 years of construction going on. That's the bad news. They should say that till the very end. This would cut off and nobody would throw anything. But I guess you can't throw anything through the screen. But there's going to be 3 to 4 years of construction on 12 and Sherwood and Roy Rogers Road. A lot of stuff that's going to go on. It's going to take a long, long time. So people are going to be pretty unhappy. Most of these things have been designed. The only good news, I guess, in all of this is that the Elwert and Kruger, that what started out as a roundabout, and then the school district came in with a big building and all of that. My understanding that they've got an occupancy permit from the city, and so they can move their equipment. But most of that's going to be pretty well done, and we're doing the last of our work, meaning county work, in probably September. So we're looking at the end of September, and that particular improvement will be done. I've already heard from some of your residents, why can't the road be, particularly Elwert and Kruger, why can't it be improved further? I mean, why can't you say, well, I just send them to the city and say, because they haven't gave us the money. No, I'm teasing. I don't do that. I just say that's all the money we had. We didn't have the money to do much more. But as it's all in phases. The Roy Rogers Road, the end of it over there is getting pretty well done. The east side of the road, again, it's the Willamette Water Supply. It's doing a lot of work. The west side will be done between Bull Mountain and Shoals on Roy Rogers. You've got the difficult part for you will be really the Borchers and Chicken Creek, to all that in there. Renee, I don't envy you. I'm sure you're getting a lot of tough calls on that. We are installing noise walls. What's bad about it, nothing really happened in that area. And all of a sudden, a beautiful new road came in. It's all landscape. Now we're tearing it up again. But no one anticipated this sort of traffic. And so I leave it to our good partners in the city as well as the county staff to deal with them in what's a really difficult situation. But that's coming along. That's construction, by the way, in 21, 23. So all of this stuff's out a bit. So that's all happening. But again, here I go again. I'm sorry, Corey.
No, you're doing great. Thank you. This is all good information for us to share. I'll piggyback Kristen's comments of appreciation on a different note. I just wanted to thank the county for the funds that you've allocated for the PPE, both through the Clean Water Services program and through the business recovery centers. I know that I've offered to pick up a lot of those orders that businesses have made, particularly through the business recovery centers. And I think in the last week or two, with the Clean Water Services masks that were delivered, I've probably gone to 25 different businesses in Sherwood and delivered those, and they very much appreciate it, and it's very helpful. And I don't know how long they'll all last. They'll probably need more in another month or so, but every little bit helps. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. The most we can do.
I also wanted to.
Yeah. Is that me? Well, some feedback in there. Yeah.
Bruce is trying to ask a question, I think.
I was also going to let you know that we're working very closely with the business recovery center, the one that's at the in Tualatin that serves our area. We stay very closely in touch. We know they have boots on the ground talking to businesses here in Sherwood, and we know the program ends the end of December, but we're glad to have that kind of localized one-on-one business assistance to our businesses here in this area, not have to go to downtown Portland for these services and that type of thing. So thank you very much for your help on that.
What I was going to say is that we started out, the only thing that was going to be granted to us out of the CARES money was $10,000. Now we've gotten up to $200,000. This is all for Clean Water Services. And you say, why did they get involved? Because nobody else was stepping up, and I serve on that board as well. But that's all free. That's free. Face masks are free. The issues that we have that the chamber and the city could help out, if you would talk with Clean Water, Diane over there, that's our CEO, and say, what would you be willing to commit to for a continuing supply? Because what I'm hearing, and you're probably hearing something different, this is going to go through the spring of 21 at least. And we may have face mask requirements much longer. Are you willing to be a partner? I mean, we can't do it for free, obviously, but she's getting huge reductions. We just, in fact, I have, where's, somewhere in my desk. Oh, here's one. I don't know if you can see that, but that's what we just got shipped in. This is a single mask, but they come in huge groups. You can't read any of the instructions. It's all Chinese, by the way. So, but we were able to go to a source, procure it. Once you get that source, it's good because everybody starts bidding. And what we're trying to do is not get into the issue where everybody's bidding on the same stuff. So all of a sudden, January of 21 comes along, and you're sitting there paying. You know, we're buying these masks. Don't quote me, but I think about it's less than $1. Well less than $1, which is really cheap compared to, you can't, but we're half the price of like Costco, Walmart, or whoever you want to pick. We wanted to guarantee a source, but we have to have a place to store, and it's local. You don't want to be running to Hillsborough, and your business community might want to do that. So if they can buy things at a much reduced cost, why wouldn't they? And I really have a strong affinity, as you can tell, for cities and saying, well, maybe they ought to be playing as a partner in this and saying we will help our partners who actually pay all the bills, which is private industry. Maybe we can help them by getting them a supply so they're not running out and having problems. So you have a big role you can play if you want to, and get into that. This is, I don't want to talk about today and tomorrow only. I think we got to look down the line because we're all good about kicking the can down the road. I'm trying not to kick the can down the road and say, okay, what do we do next spring? And I think this is important because not all of us are working in the house. I mean, Renee's group over there, I mean, you've got to have contact with people. And so what are you going to do for masks? And where's that going to come? And if all of a sudden she's told she can't buy it other than $4 a mask from, you know, from somebody's loan sharking it, you know, that's not good. So you might, Corey, you might look. I know the other chambers are saying, we'll play, we'll do that because the recovery centers, as you said, are temporary. Unfortunately, I would like to see those go on too, but it is what it is.
Yeah, thank you. I will definitely reach out and find out how we can partner with them and work together to be a long-term solution for those. I appreciate your looking to the future, and I'm asked a lot about Sherwood businesses and how are they doing during COVID, and by and large, it feels like everyone's kind of hanging in there and most everybody's surviving. But to me, it feels like, you know, 6 months or 9 months from now really is where where the test is, and how many are surviving 6 to 9 months from now. And so I do appreciate that long-term outlook.
By the way, also Clean Water. Yeah, some feedback. Clean Water also has hand sanitizer they're making. You know how to do that. I mean, they're pretty crafty people, and they're importing gloves. So there's a bigger array of product that we can, but again, they don't want to, they're not trying to, they're a sewage agency. They weren't in the business of doing this other than they were trying to fill a need. And because of their size, they can do it. And so anyway, I'll stop on that note. None of your guests have any questions. I must have done such a poor uninvited job that they don't care. You know?
I got a question or comment. I don't want to interrupt from anybody else.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Anyway, I know that it's my understanding that the CARES Act money is for 501c3s. I'm wondering about 501c6s. If you've heard anything about opportunities for them to receive nonprofit monies for their nonprofits.
What that is for everybody, that's an association of some sort, right? The 6, yeah. And so there was no definitive answer to that, and I think that they can. I personally do. one of the things we had to do, and part of the money I took off the top, and we have to have these grant folks who monitor it because it's all federal money, so it has to be accounted for. And there's all kinds of checking of rules. And I'm one of those kind of guys. I'm saying, if there's a rule, is there a way we can kind of deal with it so that we kind of, that's why they said we can't spend it on capital items. And I said, well, how about things like bathrooms that might not be fit for, for distancing? Can we do something? And they go, yeah, you can do that. So in regard to the 501c3 6, I think you can. I think you got to ask, though. You got to ask. And what I'm finding is that people are still a little foggy about what it means. And by the time you figure out the ask, it'll be November and everybody will have committed it. So I guess if I were to ask you anything, I would say, we love you, 200,000 is nice, but I think I need 400. And would come up with what you need it for. And for businesses and chambers, maybe you ought to say to Clean Water Service, which isn't part of the CARES, but if they can get going, they can start to accumulate. Gee, maybe our members would buy if we can get it down to a cheap price. Or maybe you just go in the business, but you can't buy in the quantities. I mean, we went to the schools, and the schools, I wish I remembered off the top of my head the number, but the Hillsborough School District, it was an ungodly number of masks that they need every week. It's unbelievable, and nobody's going to be able to fulfill that. So what happens when you try to put kids back in Sherwood schools? Who's going to give? Now, would the school buy them? I think they would if they can get them cheap. But if they're paying an exorbitant amount of money, they don't have the dollars to do that. But what are you going to do? I mean, what are you going to do? It's an interesting problem. Or your industry.
So I have a question for you. Whoops. Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Kristen.
Renee. No,
Go ahead. No,
Okay.
seriously, go.
I was just going to say this might seem like a naive question, but I guess is there still such a need that so many people don't have masks? I mean, I have like 20 of them at this point. I mean, are we still trying to provide them for folks under the assumption that people haven't already procured some for themselves? I understand in the business setting, trying to maybe provide them for some customers coming in, but like everybody's left their house at some point to go to the grocery store, to do something. Don't people have masks?
No, that's a great question. Some have disposable. I mean, I have behind me one that looks like that, which is a disposable. I happen to like those because I can throw them away. I've got other ones that are cloth. Not everybody can afford 20 masks, frankly, and it's customer based. Now, in your business, you're hoping not to see a lot of customers because you want to, get along your routes and pick things up. But people coming in. Take Renee, who's going to ask a question in a minute. She has people coming in. They may not have it. I mean, there's a lot of people who are coming in with shirts on their back. That's about it to a lot of facilities. So you need to provide. You need to provide, and you want a cheap way of doing it because you want to stay open, or you want to have somebody who says, "I'm here to do business, but I don't have a mask." So what are you going to do? Turn them away? I mean, in retail, you don't want to do that. So most people have figured it out. So that's the issue: is how do we do new normal?
Yeah, because since we never closed, since we're an essential service, we very early on invested in masks for all of our employees. And then now people have, purchased their own individual ones. It's kind of a fun thing for everybody. It's like, if I have to wear this, I'm going to make it be my personality. So, yeah, but that's helpful.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Renee?
So I want to go back to a conversation that you started at the beginning of your of the meeting, talking about 99W. And I think I heard you say that the two solutions that you see that aren't easy solutions would be the bypass around Tualatin using 124th and or upzoning. Is that what I heard correctly?
Yes, you either divert, like from Sherwood. What you need to do is get over to the freeway, and you don't have any option other than 99W. So if you could divert, that would be very helpful to you in a quick way. And a lot of traffic going to the coast if there was some diversion, kind of like the bypass in Dundee, out in that area. Or you start expanding 99W, and the only way you can do that through Tigard is probably to have fewer turns, like stoplights, which is not going to happen. So that, steady stream, and by widening, which means most of the businesses they're abutting that highway. You're going to have to take them out. So what do you offer people? and on train projects, when we were doing Southwest Corridor, I had people in my office here in Tigard saying, well, Roy, that's a terrible idea. You're going to come through me. I said, what if we came through you and you retained 75% of the ground and we upzoned you? I can't guarantee that, but I'll talk to my colleagues there in Tigard. Upzoned you so you could go to 6 and 7 story buildings. They go, when do we sign up? So they weren't so much worried about the toss away building as they were about what value. So the options are there. I think if you're placing all your money and saying our solution, and I know that Sherwood, the city of, you guys have talked about that. I've talked to Keith, and you're looking at 99W and how you want to study, and King City does that, and Tigard, and even 12. How do you get people through? You're at a choke point. I mean, how much traffic without expanding? What are you going to do? So to me, I think the solution for all of you in Sherwood is to say, how does that 124th work? How does our grid pattern? Because with all due respect, I didn't 12 Sherwood Road, even though we're doing an improvement, as you know, up there. And that thing's been clogged bumper to bumper forever. It's getting around with a limited access road. 124th, as long as we can keep it that way. I mean, that's a great road. It just doesn't go to the freeway very well. And our friends in Wilsonville are very protective of what they say is their intersection. And I remind them it's all of our intersections, but that's why they want to jump the freeway. But yeah, I think Renee, that's unless you have another one, I'm all ears. I mean, do you have any other solution?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what else we would do.
No, I just wanted to make sure I was hearing you correctly. So thank you. That's helpful.
You bet.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, well, I have one question and we can close on this. We're about 10 minutes to 1 o'clock. And you kind of joked about this before the call even started, about Keith kind of ribbing you all the time about how we're kind of at the end of the line in receiving things. And I think that feeling is pervasive in Sherwood, where we're not really rural, but we're not the big city. We're kind of the end of the road as far as the suburbs go, and we kind of feel like we get left out a little bit. So what can we as a community? I feel confident that our city council and the mayor and our city staff are very active in reaching out to the county and lobbying for whatever it is that we need. But what else can we as a business community and just as a community in general do to try and advocate more for the services that we need?
That's a great question. There's two or three things you have going against you. One is geography, as you've mentioned. I mean, you're just a little more isolated. But probably more importantly, your income per capita. You're not a low-income city, and frankly, your complexions. You're not as diverse a community as others. You're talking to somebody who believes in diversity, equity, and inclusion. You're talking to somebody who's not believing that we should ever discriminate. But that goes two ways. I mean, you can't discriminate because you don't fit categories. But unfortunately, unless you check those boxes, that's the problem. And that's what I argue about now on many things. I say, well, if we're truly a non-discriminatory community, then all boats have to float. I mean, we just can't pick and choose. But unless you can change your demographics, it's going to be very hard because, I know your city council and your manager. I'm trying to say, get them more. But it's an uphill battle. It really is. So what would I do? Be loud and bold. Ask. Say, this is what we want. And you are not shy about that. Your community is very good. But continue to do that. Continue to understand things are long-term. Over my career, I moved things in inches. I've never made many yards, but we got there with a little step at a time. So start getting things on the list, saying you got to listen to us because they will. We will.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, any last comments before we close?
No, we just want to thank you for doing this with us today, and we really appreciate it. And I'm fairly new here, but it's been fascinating to me to keep learning about what some of the opportunities are for us, since we definitely want to be very proactive as a city, and it's very clearly the case from the council and the city management. So thank you so much.
Oh, you bet, Bruce. And be sure that you get to know John Southgate. Have you met John at all?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
tell my friend John that you exist and that it's important.
Yes.
We're not just looking.
John knows about me almost every weekend. I write him emails and
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Tell him that what I told him is I think we need to have a group, much like the WCCC, only for economic development, where all of those who participate in those activities from all the cities are there, not just some kind of cobbled together issue, because there are people in Tigard who want to locate. You guys have the land, you just soon see them stay here. There's people maybe have outgrown what you have and they want to go to a different community, and so we can participate, we can recruit effectively. So please do it. Yeah.
Yeah, John's
Thank you
been
so
wonderful.
much.
So thank you so much.
No, thank all of you. Have a good rest of your lunch, and for the 5 I see, I appreciate your time.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you, Roy. Thanks
Thank
everybody
you.
for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.